Well, as an old rancher once said, happy cows make for delicious milk, or beef for that matter.
Yeah, but something that leads to unhappy cows or all those pesky critters around them.
A cow standing still in the sun might look fine, but it could be losing several pints of blood every single week to tiny thieves. These insects do not just bite. They wage a non-stop war that leaves animals too tired to eat or rest.
Hornflies can feed 20 to 30 times on cattle and cause a significant amount of blood loss in livestock. One of the things that also the flies will do is transmit bacteria that causes pink eye.
The damage adds up until the animal simply gives up. One farmer noticed that certain wild animals never seem to have this problem. He tried a weird trick that involves black and white paint. If you look a little closer, you find the real story of how a simple pattern stopped 1 million stabs. Tiny monsters. Most people think of predators as animals with big teeth or long claws. They think of wolves in the dark woods or sharks in the deep blue ocean. But when you look at the real facts, the most dangerous thing on a farm is something you can barely see. We are talking about the mosquito and the biting fly. These tiny bugs do not seem like much when there is just one of them. You might slap one on your arm and go about your day. But on a farm in the middle of a hot summer, they do not come alone. They come in swarms of millions. They turn the air into a thick, buzzing cloud of hunger. To start, we have to understand that a cow is a large animal. A healthy beef cow can weigh over 1,200 pounds. It has thick skin and a strong tail to swish away pests. But believe it or not, even an animal that big can be taken down by something as small as a mosquito. These insects do not take a life with one big bite. Instead, they do it by taking thousands of tiny sips of blood every single day. One study found that a cow in a heavily overrun field can lose up to half a pint of blood in just 24 hours. That might not sound like much for a big cow, but it never stops. Day after day, the bugs keep coming. They bite the ears, the belly, and the legs. They find the spots where the skin is thin and the blood is close to the surface. When you look at what is actually happening, the cow's whole life changes. Instead of grazing on the green grass, it spends all its energy trying to survive the swarm. It will shake its head for hours. It will stomp its feet until its joints are sore. It will swish its tail until it is too tired to move. This is what farmers call fly stress. It is not just about the itch. It is about total exhaustion. To put it in simple words, the cow is running a marathon every single day just to keep the bugs off. Because it is so busy fighting, it does not eat enough. It does not drink enough water. Its body starts to break down. Most people look right past this part, but the damage goes even deeper. The constant stabs from these bugs cause the cow's heart to beat faster. Its body temperature rises as it struggles in the sun. If a cow is pregnant, this stress can be too much for the unborn calf. Farmers have reported losing entire generations of cattle because the mothers were too weak to carry them. This is the part that makes absolutely no sense to people who live in the city. But for a rural family, it is a total disaster. A farm that loses its cattle loses its way of life. Here is a wild theory that some people are starting to talk about. Some researchers believe that mosquitoes are not just looking for blood. They might be sending the electrical signals from our cows' brains. There is a thought that cows emit a specific distress frequency when they are tired. This frequency might act like a dinner bell for every bug within a 5-mile radius. If this is true, the cow is accidentally calling its own end. This would mean that the more stressed the cow gets, the more bugs show up to finish the job. It is a terrifying cycle that feels like something out of a science fiction movie. The insects do not just take blood. They leave things behind. They carry diseases that can spread through a herd like wildfire. One mosquito can carry a virus that shuts down a cow's brain or makes its lungs stop working. They can also cause skin infections. Every time a bug bites, it leaves a tiny hole. In the humid heat of the summer, those holes become targets for bacteria. Soon, the cow is covered in sores that will not heal. It becomes a cycle of pain that the animal cannot escape on its own. It is not even close to a fair fight. Wait, there is one big problem with how we have been fighting these small bugs. A visual shield. For a long time, the only way to help the cows was to use strong chemicals. Farmers would spray their fields with poison or rub oily liquids onto the cows' backs. But these bugs are smart. They are very good at surviving. Every time we used a new spray, the bugs adapted. Soon, the chemicals did not work anymore. Plus, many people started to worry about those poisons getting into the milk or the meat. People wanted a cleaner way to protect the animals. They wanted a solution that did not involve a lab or a factory. This is where our clever farmer enters the story. He was not a world-famous scientist. He was just a man who spent a lot of time outside watching how nature works. He started thinking about the zebra. Zebras live in parts of Africa where the flies are even worse than they are in the United States. In those areas, there is a bug called the tsetse fly. If a fly bites a horse or a cow, it is usually the end of the line for that animal. But zebras seem to walk through those fields without a care in the world. They do not have farmers to spray them, yet they are not covered in sores or swarming with bugs. The part that nobody talks about is that the farmer had a wild theory. What if the black and white stripes were not just for hiding from lions? What if they were a type of bug armor? Most people have no idea that flies have very strange eyes. They see the world in a way that is totally different from humans. They are very good at seeing motion, but they are not great at seeing details. The farmer wondered if the stripes were creating an optical illusion that made it impossible for the flies to land. It sounds like a movie, but it is 100% real logic. He decided to test his idea. He took a group of black cows and divided them into 3 teams. The first team was left alone. They were the normal cows. The second team was painted with black stripes, just to see if the smell of the paint mattered. The third team was the star of the show. He used white, water-based paint to give them bright stripes, just like a zebra. His neighbors thought he had lost his mind. They saw a man in a field painting his cows like circus animals, and they laughed. But the farmer did not care. He wanted to see the facts. When he looked at the results, his jaw hit the floor. The cows that were painted like zebras had 50% fewer flies on them. While the normal cows were stomping and swishing their tails in frustration, the zebra cows were standing still and eating. They were calm. They were happy. The flies would buzz toward the striped cows, but as they got close, they would suddenly veer off or fly right past. It was as if the cows had become invisible to the bugs. The stripes were acting like a jammer for the flies' navigation systems. There is another wild theory here that sounds even crazier. Some people think the stripes actually create a tiny magnetic field. We know that some insects use the Earth's magnetism to find their way. If the black and white pattern breaks up that magnetic signal, the fly might feel like its compass is spinning in circles. It would feel dizzy and disoriented. This would explain why they do not just fly around the stripes, but actually seem to avoid the animal entirely. If looking at a cow makes a fly feel sick, the cow is finally safe. But it is not as easy as it looks to trick a hungry insect forever. Tech war. If you take away all the noise, it is truly about how the fly sees the world, a perspective that is fundamentally alien to our own. To a human, a cow is a solid stationary object, but to a fly, the world is a dizzying stream of motion and light. Scientists who first heard about the farmer's success with zebra stripes decided they needed to look much closer at this biological interaction. They found that when a fly tries to land, it is performing a high-stakes calculation that requires it to judge distance and velocity perfectly. The fly relies on a phenomenon known as optic flow, where the movement of images across its compound eyes tells it how fast it is moving relative to its target. It needs to know exactly how fast it is going, so it can slow down at the last possible second, transitioning from a high-speed flight to a delicate touchdown. However, the introduction of black and white stripes creates a chaotic flickering effect as the fly approaches. This rhythmic strobe of high-contrast patterns messes with their depth perception in a way that their primitive brains cannot decode. They cannot tell where the cow starts and the air ends. It is like trying to land a high-speed plane on a runway that is not only moving, but spinning in dizzying circles. The fly's internal navigation system begins to glitch, unable to find a stable point of reference. Eventually, the fly gets so confused and overwhelmed by the visual noise that it simply gives up, veering away to find a target that makes more sense to its eyes. This realization was a huge breakthrough in our understanding of pest management, but it simultaneously raised more uncomfortable questions about our own history. Why haven't we been doing this for 100 years? The truth is that humans have always tried to build rigid, physical walls between themselves and the chaos of nature. For centuries, our primary strategy was exclusion and irritation. We built screen doors for our houses and draped fine mesh nets over our beds, hoping to create a sanctuary where the bugs couldn't reach us. In more ancient times, we used the sharp, aromatic smoke from cedar wood or dried herbs to drive away swarms. In the old days, farmers would even build massive, smoldering fires around the perimeter of their barns to keep the air thick with heavy smoke. It was an effective deterrent, but it was an immense amount of work, and it had the unfortunate side effect of making everything, the animals, the milk, the farmers themselves, smell like a permanent campfire. As the industrial age dawned, we wanted something easier and more invisible. We wanted a solution that didn't require constant tending or smelling like a bonfire. So we turned to the chemical bottle. Most people look right past this part of the story, but the reliance on the chemical bottle is a classic short-term fix that ignores the long-term reality of biology. When you spray a field or a herd with a potent insecticide, you might take out 99% of the mosquitoes or flies in a single afternoon. On the surface, it looks like a total victory, but that remaining 1% that survives is incredibly special. They are the outliers, the individuals who possess a natural genetic strength or a unique mutation that allowed them to live through the poison while their peers died. When those survivors go on to have babies, they pass that resistance down. Their offspring are even stronger, born with the biological machinery to neutralize the toxins we throw at them. Over time, through the relentless engine of natural selection, you end up with a swarm of superbugs that can practically eat poison for breakfast. By trying to finish off the bugs with increasingly harsh chemicals, we actually made them harder to deal with, inadvertently breeding an army of insects that are immune to our best weapons. There is also the cascading problem of the environment to consider. Those chemicals do not simply stay on the cow's hide or the blades of grass where they were sprayed. They are part of a larger fluid system. They wash off into the grass when it rains, seeping into the groundwater. They flow into the nearby streams where the fish live, and the dragonflies hunt. They get deep into the soil where the earthworms are constantly working to aerate the earth. Pretty soon, in your quest to protect a single animal, you find that you are hurting the very land that feeds the cattle. You are poisoning the foundation of the ecosystem. This is why the zebra paint idea was so fundamentally brilliant. It was a physical solution to a complex biological problem. It did not use any toxins that would persist in the food chain. It did not harm the birds that eat the flies or the bees that pollinate the clover. It just used the simple, clean power of light and patterns to create a visual barrier. Here is another wild theory that some researchers are beginning to consider. Some scientists wonder if mosquitoes and biting flies are actually evolving to be attracted to the very chemicals we use to stop them. Evolution is a clever architect, and there is a growing thought that the bugs might be starting to recognize the specific scent of bug spray as a reliable signal that a host is nearby. To a mosquito, the smell of DEET or synthetic pyrethroids might eventually become synonymous with the presence of a human or a cow. It would be like a dinner bell for a predator. If this turns out to be true, every time we spray our animals or ourselves, we might be accidentally inviting more bugs to the party, essentially broadcasting our location to the entire neighborhood. This would mean our best defense has become our biggest weakness, a tragic irony of modern technology. Believe it or not, some people are now taking this concept even further by studying the the physics of light reflection. They are looking at how light bounces off different colors and how that impacts insect behavior. Did you know that mosquitoes are naturally attracted to dark colors because in their visual spectrum, those colors look like deep shadows where they can hide from predators in the drying heat of the sun? A dark-furred cow looks like a giant safe haven. By painting a cow white or giving it those bright, high-contrast stripes, you are removing those perceived hiding spots. You are transforming the cow from a welcoming shadow into a bright, confusing, and highly visible object that the bugs instinctively want to avoid. It is a simple shift in thinking, from chemistry to geometry, that changes the whole game of how we coexist with the natural world. Instead of trying to eliminate our way out of a problem, we are finally learning how to speak the language of the fly's own senses. While everyone was looking over here, this was happening elsewhere. Missing links. To say it was big is not even half of it when you look at the global bug population. In many parts of the world, mosquito swarms are getting bigger and more aggressive. This is not just bad luck. It is a sign that our natural systems are falling apart. In a healthy forest or field, some animals eat millions of bugs every day. Bats, dragonflies, and birds are the natural security guards of the farm. But as we cut down trees and use more chemicals, those guards are disappearing. When the predators go away, the pests take over. Here is a wild theory that some researchers are starting to talk about. They believe that mosquitoes might be sensing the signals from our technology. Think about all the cell phone towers and signals moving through the air. Some people think these signals are confusing the bugs and making them angrier or more likely to swarm in huge numbers. While this is still just a theory, it shows how little we actually know about these tiny creatures. We might be accidentally calling the swarms to our farms without even knowing it. Another strange thing is happening in places like Florida. There is something called the python effect. People brought big snakes from other countries and let them go in the wild. Those snakes started eating all the rabbits and opossums. You might think that is not a big deal for a cow, but it is. Mosquitoes used to feed on those small mammals. Now that the snakes have eaten them all, the mosquitoes are hungry. They have moved from the woods to the farms to find a new source of blood. This change in the food chain has turned a small bug problem into a massive crisis for cattle owners. We also have to look at the weather. In the United States, the summers are getting longer and the winters are getting shorter. Mosquitoes need warmth to survive. In the past, a hard freeze in the winter would finish off most of the eggs and keep the population low. But now, the ground does not freeze as deeply or for as long. The bugs are waking up earlier and staying active later into the fall. This means the cows have to endure months of extra biting. It is an endless season of stress that wears them down until they simply cannot go on. Some people even believe that the bugs are part of a planet-wide reset. The theory is that when an area gets too crowded or out of balance, the bugs show up to thin things out. It sounds like nature has its own way of clearing the board. If this is true, the mosquitoes are not just pests. They are a warning sign that the land is sick. Painting stripes on a cow might protect that one animal, but it does not fix the broken world around it. We have to look at the big picture if we want to truly be safe. If you look a little closer, you find the real story of our survival. A simple truth. At the end of the day, the story of the zebra-painted cow is about much more than just one single farm or one group of tired animals. It is a deep lesson for all of us about how we interact with the entire world around us. Plain and simple, we live in a time where we think every single problem needs a high-tech solution that costs a lot of money. We spend billions of dollars every year trying to invent new machines, complex scanners, and strong poisons to solve our problems. We build massive labs where people in white coats try to outsmart nature. But sometimes, the most powerful answer has been sitting right in front of us for millions of years. We just did not have the eyes to see it. The zebra has been wearing its striped armor since long before humans even started farming or building fences. While we were busy trying to invent a better spray, nature had already finished the design. All we had to do was stop our busy lives and look at what was already working. To put it in simple words, we need to start working with nature instead of fighting it like an enemy. When that clever farmer picked up a simple paintbrush and a bucket of white paint, he was choosing a path of watching closely. He was admitting that he did not have all the fancy answers, and that the wild world might know something he did not. This is a huge shift in how we think. Most people look right past the simple things, because they think simple means weak. But in this case, a few white lines did more than 1,000 gallons of chemical spray. This kind of thinking is exactly what will save our farms and our food supply in the future. We can build better barns, and we can drain every puddle of standing water within 5 miles. But we also have to understand the visual language of the pests that haunt us. If we do not speak their language, we will always be one step behind. Here is a wild theory that makes some people very uncomfortable. Some people think that insects like mosquitoes are not just bugs, but are more like tiny biorobots that follow a very specific code. If that is true, then the zebra stripes are like a virus that crashes their software. When the fly sees those black and white lines, its tiny brain cannot process the data. It sees a flickering shadow instead of a meal. This would mean that nature has its own version of computer hacking. By painting our cows, we are basically changing the password to the cow's blood. The bugs show up with their old keys, but they do not fit anymore. This makes you wonder what other codes are hidden in the feathers of birds or the scales of fish. We might be living in a world full of secret messages that we are too loud to hear. There is even talk now of making striped blankets for horses or striped shirts for hikers who go into the deep woods. Imagine a world where you do not need to spray yourself with smelly chemicals every single time you go for a walk in the park or a hike in the mountains. You would just put on a shirt with a specific pattern that makes you look like a confusing, flickering shadow to a mosquito. It sounds too simple to be true, but the facts do not lie. When researchers used these patterns on people, the number of bites dropped by over 50%. The cows are calmer, the milk is flowing in higher amounts, and the blood is staying exactly where it belongs, inside the animal. This is not just a trick. It is a whole new way of living safely on this planet. As we move forward into the future, we have to wonder what else we are missing, because we are too focused on our phones and our machines. What other animals have secrets that could solve our biggest problems? Believe it or not, there is a theory that plants actually talk to each other using a hidden network in the soil. When a bug starts eating a leaf, the plant sends out a chemical signal through its roots to warn the other plants nearby. The other plants then start making their leaves taste bitter so the bugs will go away. If we could learn to listen to that chemical conversation, we might not need any pesticides at all. We could just ask the plants to protect themselves. Another wild thought involves the birds. Some people believe that birds can sense the magnetic pull of a swarm of insects from many miles away. They act like an early warning system for the entire forest. If we paid attention to how the birds move, we would know exactly when to move our cattle into the barns. But instead of watching the sky, we watch our weather apps. We have lost the ability to read the signs that nature is giving us every single hour. The earth is full of these tiny details that almost everyone misses because they are looking for something big and loud. To say we have been blind is not even the half of it. We have been ignoring the best teachers we have. If you look a little closer, you find the real story is about balance. When we take a predator out of the system, like a bat or a dragonfly, we are inviting the mosquitoes to take over. Some people believe that mosquitoes are actually a tool used by the earth to keep populations from getting too big. If a herd of deer gets too large, the bugs show up to weaken them. It sounds like a movie, but it is 100% real that nature has its own way of clearing the board. By painting stripes on our cows, we are telling the system that our animals are not part of that clearing process. We are using the earth's own logic to stay safe. The farmer and his striped cows are just the beginning of a new era. It is a powerful reminder that a little bit of curiosity can change everything. You do not need a degree from a fancy college or $1 million in the bank to make a massive difference. You just need to pay attention to the world around you. The next time you see a bug buzzing around your head, do not just swat it and move on. Think about why it is there and how it sees you. Think about what signals you are sending out into the air. You might just stumble upon the next big idea that saves 1,000,000 lives. Most people will keep buying the same sprays and complaining about the same problems, but the clever ones will start looking at the stripes. There is a final mystery that we're only just starting to talk about. Some people believe that the Earth itself is a sentient being that is watching how we react to these problems. They think that nature is testing us to see if we can learn to live in peace instead of always trying to finish off everything we do not like. If we keep using poison, the bugs get stronger. If we use stripes and patterns, the bugs just go somewhere else. It is a lesson in nonviolent defense. It is about being smarter, not being stronger. If we can master this, we might find that the most dangerous creatures on the planet are not the ones with wings, but the ones who refuse to learn. The most powerful solutions do not always look advanced. Sometimes a few stripes of paint are all it takes to change the world. But are we missing a bigger secret about how these bugs are evolving right under our noses? What do you think is the real reason these bugs are swarming more than ever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories like this. Thanks for watching.